So a couple of disclaimers. First of all, I apologize for the glare. Most cybersecurity people have a lot of hair, so as I get better in this role, hopefully it'll grow back. The other thing is I am a security guy who likes computers. I'm not a computer guy who does security. So if you're going to ask me about some technical thing, I may have to get back to you on that. So really what I want to talk about today is more of the management side and some of the considerations that I have to deal with as a manager versus super technical stuff. And also, we don't take the SOC on a road show to tell everybody how we defend ourselves and what tools we use, so you're not going to see that. So it's going to look pretty bare bones, that's okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the way I view the world and some of the considerations we have, and if you have any questions, that's fine. I also understand I'm the last speaker before lunch. That's great, because I haven't eaten and I just came from a budget meeting before coming here, so I'm a little on edge myself. So we'll get you through here pretty quickly. All right. So ESOC today, fairly standard SOC. Network monitoring, we have endpoints, as you might imagine, endpoint monitoring. We do insider threat monitoring. The insider threat analysis is done by my previous organization, the Insider Threat Shop. So we essentially do when it comes to an insider threat, we take a look at the network activity, but the further analysis as far as travel, finances, and all those other kinds of things that are part of what the National Insider Threat Task Force requires, that's done somewhere else. Obviously, incident response. We also have mobility security. Not everyone does that from their SOC. We do in the Bureau. And we also do our own engineering. So instead of having a separate engineering department, we have a small team that does our engineering in-house for our networks, the SOC networks that are enclaved off. So we protect all three enclaves, or all three classification levels, excuse me. And we are also not the only SOC in the Bureau. So we have another SOC that protects, that kind of sits on the perimeter, and then we cover the enterprise networks on the inside. So we sort of have two layers of defense there. We are not responsible for ISO compliance and that sort of thing. We are we're monitoring and incident response. This becomes an issue because a lot of ISOs think, well, I can just dump all my logs in the SOC, and the SOC will figure out what I'm supposed to do. Well, that's not our mission. Within the Bureau, the ISO, or the system owner, is responsible for incident response within their own specific systems. We cover the enterprise networks. So that's always a bit of tension, right? Who looks at what? Where do these logs go? Obviously, we're interested in individual systems and island networks, but we're not directly tied into those necessarily. All righty. Any questions about that? I know it's pretty high level. Probably nothing mysterious on that slide. All right, so the next thing is, that's ESOC today, ESOC tomorrow. This is slide number 2, so we're halfway there. Orchestration. So I really appreciated the previous presentation by Palo Alto. We are exploring orchestration and some of this automation. So bullets number 1 and 3 there. And so I think it really, when you think about automation, I agree that you want to automate as much as you can, but there does come a point where you might want to let a threat run for intelligence purposes. And I think that that's a key point to understand with us versus the previous speakers. On the commercial side, protect our IP, don't really care what the intelligence side of is. We as the FBI, we have an intelligence mission. So sometimes we let the threat operate a little bit under control so we can see what they're doing, generate those IOCs, and then they get circulated back into the intelligence community, or we use them ourselves. So this is really one of those things where I have to make a management decision, how far down the road of automation and or orchestration do we really want to go? Do I want to send everyone home at 5 o'clock at night and come on a Friday and come back Monday at 9 and check to see what happened, or do I really want to man a wash floor 24/7? actually having that discussion right now because of my budget meeting. But anyway, so those are the kinds of discussions that I think are important to have. I love automation. I love killing stuff as soon as it hits fires on something. But maybe you don't want to do that. And so that's just something to think about a little bit. Data management. This shouldn't be new to anybody. Giant, huge problem. Everything from retention. So within the government, and I'm not real sure how it works in the private sector. However, I got less than 2 years before I'm eligible to retire, so I really enjoy to learn how the private sector works. Hint, hint. But we have retention requirements in the government for how long we need to hold on to data. And so then it becomes, well, do you move this over to cold storage, to Glacier storage if you're in the cloud? How often do you think you're going to look at it? Can you permanently, hard delete items, that kind of thing? Every once in a while you need to scrub your data and say, hey, are we actually even looking at this stuff? Does it really matter? You'd be surprised. Something that was important 5 years ago, some application that we just don't use anymore and we're still collecting on it, clean that crap out, right? And get a new data set in there. In my previous job, we actually had someone called the Data Czar. That was my nickname, and his job was to basically get data sets in to the Insider Threat Office, figure out whether this data was still meaningful, what did it mean, and then clean it out if we didn't need it. And that's the same thing that I'm trying to bring into the SOC. Just grinding away large amounts of data. You can, blow out your Splunk license or whatever, but also it's got to be meaningful, and you might want to retire some of that stuff after a while. Threat hunting, I think, is absolutely essential. Unfortunately, threat hunting requires a lot of data, right? You've got to be able to turn over lots of rocks throughout your environments. That requires a lot of data and a lot of processing to do that, unless you can automate some of that. I totally agree with Palo Alto that I think that's the wave of the future. I think it's the best way to go. It's a skill set that's hard to come by when you're trying to hire people. So we're trying to develop that in-house, train our folks to be able to do that. And I think it's good because you've got to know your own internal networks anyway. So pulling someone off the street and throw them into threat hunting might not be successful right away anyway. So, I would encourage, we started off with it just being a part-time job for a couple of folks. I want to get to the point where we have an actual team of just, a few bodies that do this full-time. Sort of the ultimate tier, I guess, of analysis would be threat hunting. All right, more visibility, more coverage, more toys, more people, more money. We suffer from the same resource problems that everybody else does. We're not 24, the TV show, or I don't know, there was some Bruce Willis movie, I guess, one of these Die Hard movies where the FBI SOC gets hacked. I watched it on the Netflix. Yeah. What's that? Live Free or Die Hard. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what my SOC looks like. Not, we got a broken stuff over here, and sit in the corner and walk around. There's this server sitting on the floor. You got to step over. It probably looks like you're laughing. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Guy with a soldering iron in the corner trying to keep my storage up, that kind of thing. We suffer from lack of resources like everyone else. And I think when it comes down to some of these more advanced technologies, cloud, what is it? We call it UVDI, but it's virtual desktop, this kind of thing, where your tools might not work in those environments, or you've got to get the newer version of the tool to work in that environment. You got to understand, hey, look, am I going to pay another license, or do I accept risk in this particular area, and how do I reduce that threat vector? Yeah, it's not very easy to do, and I don't have the answers to it, but these are the kinds of things that I think, I don't really know the mixture of the audience, but hopefully some of you are management types, you'll think, yeah, those are the same kind of problems that I have as well. And I'm telling you, it's across the security community. You are not alone. We're in the same boat together. Just a quick kind of thing. You've probably heard that the FBI and the CIA, sometimes there's a little bit of competition between us as intelligence organizations. That's absolutely true. What I've noticed, however, is that when it comes to security, it's really not that way. I think most security types realize that we're outnumbered, we're surrounded, and we're running out of supplies. And working together is actually the best relationships I've ever built are within the insider threat and the security program. The operational side is just as cutthroat as it always has been. All right, you can ignore that last part if you didn't come here for that. So folks, really, honestly, I like the question and answer part. That was it. I hope you weren't expecting a whole lot more, but if someone has questions, I'd be honored to answer the best I can. Wow.
I'll take the first one.
Yes, sir.
So just speaking to insider threat.
Yes.
Considering there's been a lot of probably more public with Snowden and a lot of the other cases. Do you see that probably more so of an issue or less of an issue?
What a great question. So we did a study. The FBI partnered with Pacific Northwest National Labs to do a study on millennials. And so the hypothesis, or I guess the question that we were trying to answer was, are millennials, less secure than other generations because they're familiar with technology or whatever it is? I don't have a huge behavioral science background, but to me, I think it would be very strange to assume that an entire generation of people have automatically become less loyal because they like computers. I mean, that just doesn't compute in my head. So when we did this study, unfortunately, the study said, well, we did this study and we don't have a population to compare it to, so there were like no conclusions, which was weird after we spent $1 million doing it. But so I'm getting to the answer to your question. So I think part of it is there's more emphasis on it, and I think that there's more visibility in some regards, and the science has improved. So within the Bureau, we take a look at insider threat very differently. We include workplace violence, we include suicide, sabotage, support to terrorism. I mean, we can't have terrorists inside the Bureau, right? Then the classic espionage, data loss prevention, et cetera, et cetera. So many of those you're not going to find on your networks. You've got to find those indicators outside of the networks through, travel records, whatever the case is. Or you can do analytics against emails to understand motivations and this sort of thing. So I think that people use technology more, which means they leave more, digital evidence behind that we can exploit to really understand better the motivations of the person. We haven't been successful, not that we've been unsuccessful, but what some other government organizations, they've been able to prevent suicides from their insider threat programs by taking a look at people's email content. We'd like to get there someday. So that's not a SOC function. So one of the things, if you're just looking at network behavior, it's very difficult to parse out insider threats. You've got to have the whole piece of it. And so that's the way the Bureau has approached it. Very different than a lot of places. It'd be great to spend another hour talking about it, but that's not why we're here. So, yeah, but I think I don't personally believe that it's a bigger problem. I think we're just finding it more. Yes, sir.
So as I heard that you just got promoted to the SOC.
Yeah.
When you got into this job, what is your biggest challenge that they told you needed to solve?
Fix my rickety infrastructure with no budget increase. I would say that, so as far, that's a real easy throwaway answer. You were expecting something more challenging for me to tackle. I would say that I think probably the biggest challenge is the Bureau has an enormous amount of data because of who we are. So the FBI has more derogatory information than any other organization on the planet. So if you've ever talked to a terrorist, you've ever been stopped by a police officer, we probably know about it. And so when it comes to IOCs that are cyber division that's working all these cases outside the Bureau, getting that data into us so that we can take a look at the IOCs and say what applies to our environment and loading that into the tool, or we've got a hacker coming at our networks, do we own it or does Cyber Division own it because the dudes in North Korea or whatever the case? And I think a lot of this, we are very unique because we have a lot of this data and we have a lot of external hooks into a lot of places, is making sure that we take care of ourselves. And I noticed the same thing in the insider threat space. The Bureau is very good at advising external partners. We don't use a lot of those same techniques on ourselves. I mean, we didn't have a workplace violence program until I started it about a year or two ago, but we were helping other organizations set up their own workplace violence programs. I'm like, well, why don't we share the love, guys? So I think that's definitely one of the bigger challenges that we have is don't forget about us, Cyber Division, as you're hunting down these threats outside the organization. Yep. Yes, sir.
So, follow on, you brought up that you're talking about rickety infrastructure.
Yeah.
So how much are you really looking at moving your cyber operations to a cloud?
Yeah.
Whether it's going to be a FedRAMP cloud or even a commercial cloud to process that data.
Yeah, so everyone that I've talked to, and we agree with this, it's got to be a hybrid approach. So the question is, do you monitor what's going on in the cloud, or do you move your entire SOC to the cloud? And there are lots of issues with both, right? So if you just monitor in the cloud and you keep your on-prem, then you've got multiple panes of glass. You might not necessarily be able to draw the connections that you might want to. If you pump everything up to the cloud, you've got latency issues. There's actually more infrastructure to get it up there. One of the things that we are trying to understand is the cost model of all of this, because that's going to determine where we go. If you take one of these, you take a SIM tool that grinds through massive amounts of data and you throw it in the cloud, and you get charged by puts and gets and that kind of thing, I mean, you could rip through a budget pretty quickly. So, I personally struggle because I'm not getting a lot of assistance in this world of people telling me what it's going to cost. It's a chicken versus the egg. How much data are you going to run? Well, I don't know. What apps do we have up there? Well, you can't, no one can really help. I don't know of anyone that has done only on-prem or only on cloud. Everyone has hybrid, and I think that's the direction we're going to go to. I would like to eventually shrink. I think we need to match where the organization is. So right now, most of the organization is on-prem, and as we move to the cloud, I think our operations will start to pick up more space there, only because if that's where most of our activity is as an organization, that's where we need to be as well. And then we can shrink a little bit what we have on-prem. No matter what, we're still going to have to defend. So even if we're not conducting analysis on hard metal, we've still got to have some kind of presence on our networks to actually go in and block and whatever. So it's never going to completely go away. I think what we're going to do is we're going to shift as the organization shifts. I'd like to be ahead of it, but I think realistically we're going to be behind it. I don't know if that answers your question, but okay.
I have another one.
Sure.
So with everything going to cheaper encryption, you're seeing a lot more open source encryption technology.
Right.
How do you view the ESOC being able to handle that as opposed to what the normal was, break and inspect? Because that's not going to be a viable solution. So have you thought about that? And then what is the FBI's approach to solving that with ESOC?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't that problem hasn't landed on my plate yet. So I'll let you know when I solve it.
How about IP6?
Yeah, same thing. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask, given the unique nature of the FBI and the fact that your responsibility to kind of defend and protect your infrastructure and your systems, but also having a criminal investigative
Right.
arm
Yep.
of the organization, do you think that your attacks or the nature of attacks are any different, either higher or less in nature, given the fact that you have that other element as part of the organization? And then the other thing I was going to ask also is do you criminal investigative case file?
Yeah. So I'll start backwards. I don't know that statistic. I mean, obviously, if we're hit, and we were able to identify who the actor is, that would turn into a criminal case. As far as how many times that's actually happened from someone, actually getting into and compromising our infrastructure, I can tell you it hasn't happened since I've been here, so that's 2 months that we're good. Yeah, I mean, I don't have that kind of statistics on the top of my head. I'm sorry, the previous question was, the like types of attacks?
Just the nature of the
Yeah.
attacks. Is it more or less the fact that you're, married as an organization with a criminal investigative?
I'm not sure I would ever be able to know that for sure. My guess would, a lot of these attacks are automated if they're coming from certain actors. I think we probably are a larger target to, foreign nation APTs. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff that people would want to get their hands on. Although we have a lot of like PII, we don't store credit card numbers, and so I don't know that from the criminal element we would see a lot. We're pretty locked down, so our internal classified networks aren't going to get hit by hacktivists. So, I think that our adversary looks a lot different. I don't know that it's more or less than anybody else. Does that sound about right?
All right.
Did I guess that right? Okay.
So unfortunately, I think everybody wants to get to lunch, but
Yeah,
thank you
sure.
to Supervisory Special Agent Sharp. Big round of applause.